All right, so today we are with Perry Mosier. So Perry, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your operation?
Okay, as she said, I'm Perry Mosier. We run Mosier Simmental Ranch, which is a purebred Simmental operation, and then we do some custom feeding. We sell bulls private treaty usually after January 1st, 35 to 40 bulls. Do some commercial bred heifers. Do corn and oats and hay for crops, some millet and stuff like that. So pretty much all the feed for the cattle in the custom feedlot is home raised.
And is this a family operation, or is this something that you started yourself?
We started this ourselves. We bought the place in '85 and started out developing heifers for a brother. And then in 2004, we actually built the feedlot and got permitted.
Okay.
Before, we kind of done things the hard way. I used to pail feed 300 heifers. So
I would not have wanted to be your hired man.
Well, when we done the feedlot, it's made things a lot simpler. But no, it's a family operation. 2 daughters that come out and periodically help. Other words, it's my wife Diane and I that pretty much do everything. We chop our own corn. I haul our own manure. So we do all our own AI and pretty much everything that's done here we do ourselves. And it's also helped. My wife retired this year from her full-time job, so she says she's working for me.
And what was her full-time job?
She worked at the power plant.
Okay.
So
now she technically gets to be your hired person that you never had all these years, although she probably considers herself hired all those years.
Well, she was an employee, unpaid employee.
You started out as a cow-calf operation and later added on your custom feeding.
Well,
is that?
No, we actually started doing the custom feeding, and we basically built our herd from 2 cows.
Okay.
In the early or middle 80s, we started out with a few cows, and I was feeding cattle or developing heifers, and we just kind of grew up to the 125 head that we've gotten now. And
has it always been Simmental influenced cattle, or you add other breeds come across your place?
Well, as far as what we've raised here, it's always been Simmental.
Okay.
The cattle I feed are a little bit of everything. We've had Angus, we've had Simmental, we fed Charolais one year here, we fed Slayers one year here. They all have their good and their bad.
Right. Yep. So. Well, I'm happy to see black cattle. So what types of feed do you primarily use for your custom feeding?
On the custom feeding, we do modified distillers, which is purchased. That's the only feed besides our supplement that's purchased. And then it's grass hay, silage, alfalfa hay, millet hay, oats hay, and then corn.
And do you decide on rations, or does that come from what your customer base decides?
No, we have a nutritionist come in every year, sample feed, and he sets up the rations. The steers that we custom feed, the guy's looking for a 2.5 pound gain, so I have him set that ration up. He also sets the ration up for our bulls for a 3 pound gain, and for our heifers for a 1.5 pound gain. I let the experts do that.
That's great. That was kind of my next question was, do you have a nutritionist set up that?
Yep, we've got a guy that comes, and like I said, and we sample our hay every year because it does vary in the same way with silage and everything. And he sets it up, and if we have any issues, I talk to him, which we normally don't, and it's just a matter of getting it set and feeding it. So
where are your customers? Where do the cattle come from? What weight do the cattle come in, and what weight do they typically leave at?
Okay, right now we're only feeding for one guy. We've fed for him for 15 years. He's out of Minnesota. The cattle, we've had cattle from him from Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, So we've had cattle from all over. The ones we've got in this year are all from Montana. They come in middle to end of October at around that 6 weight. They're normally here till middle of February, the end of February, and they're generally been leaving around that 9 weight, and then they go to a confinement barn, and he wants them healthy and gaining is what he's looking for.
Okay. So you've had kind of a long time customer.
Yep.
So the relationship must be really good. What are some things that you look for in a customer that's kept that relationship going for that many years?
Well, kind of the type of cattle he buys and how he manages them. I don't want to feed any cattle that haven't had some type of pre-weaning program.
Okay.
And I'm looking for somebody that's going to do a booster program. We do feed a crumble type deal. He's kind of given me a free rein on how I manage his cattle. He's been in the yard 3 times in 15 years.
So that's trust.
Yeah.
Wow. So what health protocols do you have in place for yourself that you think is important for?
Well, the pre-weaning and the booster program, and then we monitor the cattle on a daily basis. And basically, if we have some health issues, we do a treat program. These cattle spend anywhere from 15 to 24 hours on the truck. So the first 2 weeks is pretty crucial on these cattle to make sure they're comfortable. And I've got kind of a system that when they come here, they spend a day in one pen that's kind of crowded so that I don't have them running. And this year, there's going to be some dust issues with the drought.
So how do you monitor, try to decrease stress when they're, coming in and getting shipped from miles away? Are there any specific protocols that you do when the cattle arrive at your place?
A lot of it's handling. If we do have to handle them, we try to do it at a slow pace so that we're not stirring them up. We've had situations where we have snow or rain, and then it's extra bedding to be put down, and keep them on dry ground and keep them comfortable. We have 2 to 3 days of balling calves because they're weaned. They're not pre-weaned calves. They're coming off the cow onto the semi and here.
Yep. So lots of stress.
Lots of stress, and like I said, it's keeping them comfortable. We start them out on a starter ration for 14 days, which is kind of more hay and not quite a hot ration. Just they're accustomed to eating grass.
Yep.
So we kind of work them up, and after 14 days, my nutritionist has kind of a 3 different step program that we go up on and work them up and to where we need them.
Okay. Is there a specific way you guys track the performance of the cattle or know when they're getting to that specific weight? Are you weighing them, or do you just kind of eyeball? What do you do as far as that?
On my own cattle, we do weigh them.
Okay.
On the custom cattle, I don't. It gets back to handling them again. He does, when he gets them there, he does track them because he'll have a daily gain average on the whole works and a cost to gain average.
Okay.
What it cost. Last year we fed I think it was 290 steers, and it was a 2.67 gain at $1 a pound is what he told me his costs were.
Wow.
So
how do you price out cattle when you're selling them, or do you already have a set price with your customer before any of this takes place?
Well, we don't own these cattle. He owns them.
Okay.
So basically I'm working for him.
So you're contracted under him and he's paying you a specific rate?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, he's paying me, basically what I do is I charge him a yardage fee.
Yep.
Any bedding I put out, I don't charge him to put it out because that's included in my yardage fee. But then whatever I put in the bunk, we keep track of of how much hay I feed, how much distillers I feed, how much corn I feed, and I bill him according to what I put in the bunk.
Okay.
So if he gets a good set of calves in, well, like last year, we had mild weather. They didn't eat as much, and they gained well. So it was pretty economical for him to feed them, or for me to feed them for him. When we get a bad winter and I got to feed a little heavier, it gets a little more expensive for him. But
right. And when do those cattle get shipped out of here and down to Minnesota?
They usually leave middle to end of February.
Okay. So right in the heat of winter.
Yep. Well, this year they come in 3 trucks and they'll usually leave in 5.
Okay.
So
wow.
that's usually a good sign if
right.
it takes more trucks to get them out than it did to bring them in. So
exactly. What would you say are some of the challenges that you found with custom feeding?
Well, you're dealing with cattle you don't know. Generally, the disposition on the calves is okay, but we've gotten some calves that I don't know if they've never seen a human being in their life. It's handling them a little bit different when we do have to work them. So
going to the opposite end of the spectrum, what's been your favorite thing about custom feeding cattle?
Well, I enjoy feeding cattle. Oh, favorite.
There's just so many.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I have a favorite. I guess seeing the cattle progress as we feed. It's kind of like calving in the springtime when you see the new ones. Kind of an interesting deal. And
for sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's fun to see them when they come in, and by the time they leave, they look completely different, and you have a happy customer. That's probably another enjoyable thing, is to get a phone call saying, hey, they look real nice.
They look good, or you've done a good job. So yeah, it's nice to see.
So how many years have you technically been custom feeding?
Oh, man. We had to start about, 1985?
Okay.
So we've pretty much done it since we started here. I mean, when we started, it was small numbers. We started out with, I think it was 40 head.
Okay.
And then built up to where we done up to 300 head of heifers, and then we put the feed lot in, and that program kind of changed, and it just didn't work to develop the heifers. We got the heifers were more time consuming in the spring because we developed it and we also bred them, and it got to be a lot of work in the spring. So we were getting larger in our cow operation, and it got to be too much for us. So he took his heifers to another guy, and then we just started feeding these steers, and it kind of works good because these steers leave in February when we start calving, so we can spend more time on our calving and less time feeding and dealing with feedlot cattle.
Right, so that's kind of nice. It gives you a little bit of a breather that you have a little bit more time to...
We go from custom feeding to calving, and then AI on our own cows, and then to grass and putting up hay. We had a friend here the other day that we were talking, and he said, just wouldn't it be nice once to get up and go, boy, I ain't got nothing to do today.
Right, I think a lot of people think that, but then probably within a few minutes they'll complain that they're bored.
Yeah, well, I'd sure like to try it someday,
right,
though.
Yeah, well, maybe one day you can.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap it up, do you have any advice for young farmers or ranchers that are kind of just getting started, whether it's, cow-calf or custom feeding or whatever it may be in the cattle industry? It's long days and long hours, but any advice that you wish you would have known when you were younger, that somebody would have said to you, like, hey, just keep going or things will get better, or, any advice to some young Farm Bureau members?
Well, I guess the biggest advice I'd have is don't do things the hard way. the feed systems, the feed trucks, definitely take some of the work out of this.
So don't carry the pails.
Don't carry the pails.
I'm going to have to tell my dad that. He still believes in carrying pails.
Well,
and sometimes I'm like, how many pails do we have to carry still?
There is advantages. We feed our bulls with a truck, but I still carry a couple pails a night.
Yep.
And it's a disposition deal and getting used to people. So there is advantages to carrying buckets. People are trying to work a little smarter. Nobody's using their back the way we did 30 years ago, because that's why everybody that's 60 years old has back issues, because we just picked it up and carried it. Now they're getting pallet forks, or they're getting a lift to lift it. So yeah, it's a full-time job, these cattle. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's the other thing. If you're going to get into farming or ranching, you got to do the work.
Right.
There's just no way around it. You can custom hire a lot of this stuff, but a lot of that stuff you custom hire is your profit margin.
Right. And, a lot of it, unlike other industries, a lot of it is you have to do it and work to know what works and what doesn't work, and being okay with asking your neighbor or asking for help, or saying, hey, how do you do this? This isn't working for me. The farming and ranching community, it's getting smaller every year. And I think we need to rely on each other a little bit more, that knowing that we're one big community, and hey, it's okay to say, this is not working for me. Like, what can I do to improve this? And knowing that there are people that are willing to help you.
Well, and there's people out there. You look at the farmers. They all have an agronomist that they deal with, that tells them what they should spray, gives them suggestions on what type of seed to plant, or what day of corn to seed. It's no different in this livestock industry. We've got nutritionists, we've got vets that we deal with. Sometimes talking to somebody that's doing it and saying, hey, this is what I'm running into. Have you run into this? And you go, yeah, I have, but you should maybe try this. Mm-hmm. It's hard for farmers to take advice.
Yeah, it sure is. So the last question that we ask everybody in this harvest season is this year's cattle market a boom or a bust?
Oh, it's definitely a boom. How long it's going to hold, I don't know. If I did, I'd sell the week before.
Yep.
But it's a good cattle market, and it's all the way through. The slaughter cow, the bull market, the calf market is really good right now. It
is. It's great.
The problem is we need this market because of our inputs. Mm-hmm. You look at what it cost 20 years ago to put a crop in. It's the dollars that are spent nowadays in ag is just unbelievable.
It is. Well, that kind of wraps up everything. So Perry, I really appreciate you taking the time today and allowing me to be your other passenger in your feed truck today.